We cannot survive this landscape. Those are the damning words of Sony CEO answering questions on the PS6 and what the data center crisis is doing to their operations, which does all sound rather grim, doesn't it? What we see is the entire hardware industry is shifting and struggling. PC shipments are down, business models are being rewritten, they have to be, the unit economics underpinning them have completely changed, and the biggest players are working out how the hell they can keep their profits up. But if Sony, of all companies, can't survive without changing, well, what does that mean for everyone smaller? And perhaps, more importantly, what does it mean for us? This all kicked off when Sony's CEO Hiroki Totoki told the Wall Street Journal that the company has still not settled on a release date for the PlayStation 6, which in a way isn't new news. Back in May, he told investors the very same thing. 6 years on from the PS5's launch, there is no sign of a replacement, even though development for that replacement likely started as soon as the PS5 shipped, just like it has for every console before it. Now, factoring in a COVID slowdown, estimates had been pointing to a 2027 or 2028 window. 2027 looks extremely unlikely. 2028 is up in the air. There's a simple, obvious reason why. The AI data center crisis is still going. The build-out is happening and it's gobbling everything up. Now, DigiTimes spoke to their industry insiders and basically they say that all memory production from Samsung, Micron, and SK Hynix is sold out through 2027 and almost all of it is earmarked for data centers. Tom's Hardware has got DDR5 RAM prices up 500% in a year, and it seems this stuff is not going to stop anytime soon. And that leaves the entire tech industry, especially luxuries like gaming consoles, facing two questions. Where do the parts come from? And if you get them at the prices they're charging right now and worse prices we're expecting, then how the hell can you even build a console? What console can you afford to build? Manta Sleep is sponsoring this one, and it's such an easy recommendation. Look, I've used their sleep masks for years. I actually got them before they were sponsoring the channel, and I had to buy another one because my girlfriend nabbed my original one. Which is a pretty good endorsement, I guess. Now, I first picked mine up when I started to take sleep more seriously. Most of the masks that I had tried before just didn't really feel comfortable, stuff could kind of press into my eyes. Manta, though, uses cushioned eye cups that sit around your eyes instead. And what's great is you can move each cup to fit your face, and there's enough space to open your eyes without the mask touching your eyelids or your eyelashes. Now, the fit gives you full blackout without having to pull the strap painfully tight. It immediately became part of my normal sleep setup. It's especially killer whenever I'm traveling or just need to sleep when there's maybe some light coming through the window. And what's especially cool is the add-ons and variations that can really just be tailored to whatever you specifically want. As an example, do you want ones with built-in earbuds so that, well, you can listen to whatever you want to listen to, but whenever you say roll over to side sleep, don't have like an earbud jammed into your ear, creating uncomfortable pressure, which makes it harder to fall asleep. So, Manta are absolutely killer. And if you want to try them out for yourself, just click my link below and use code BellularNews for 10% off. To really understand just how serious Sony are with their changing business model, we first got to check in, well, with Framework. They make awesome stuff. I would love a Framework desktop running Linux. A lovely future, and honestly, a lovely company, which is why, in their usual style, they were very blunt and transparent about just how bad things became for them, and how quickly they became bad. They say that one of their suppliers raised costs, quote, far beyond anything they had predicted, beyond what Framework could actually absorb, with outputting their ability to operate as a company at real financial risk. You see, Framework had budgeted for a low to mid double-digit percentage increase for the quarter. Not even the year, just the quarter, but the real component cost change they had was, quote, more than double that of the prior inventory. And of course it's the same everywhere else. Valve's engineers told Bloomberg, honestly, it's still getting worse. What people are seeing in retail shelves right now from our observations is lagging what we're seeing from a bulk supply by at least 3 to 6 months. But even reaching those shelves is getting harder. Research from IDC and Counterpoint suggests that worldwide PC shipments fell by at least 4% year on year last quarter. Now on its own, 4%. That number wouldn't really mean that much. But the thing is, the industry was growing right up until that point. So this is actually a trend flipping direction, not just a little blip, and it's going to mean significantly fewer devices reaching people. Now, while it's tough everywhere, one group who are able to navigate this sometimes are actually manufacturers. They're now shipping cheaper, lower spec units, they're pushing higher margin, top spec ones, and basically riding surges of panic buying as people are really afraid afraid that, if they don't buy whatever it is they want now, it's just going to get more expensive. So across manufacturers, we see revenue holding up, but those are basically those manufacturers tweaking their existing business model to fit this crisis. But not everyone's able to tweak themselves out of this. Some companies need to change in a deep way, and that's where we go back to Sony. Sony planned to lead the charge in this, and if we go back to that interview with the Wall Street Journal with their CEO, the broad framing was that Sony had to change. He called the old Sony a traditional business. Shocking. One that made hardware and then sold that hardware and basically made its money that way. Traditional businesses are important. I have great respect for these businesses, but at the same time, we need to change. And if that sounds a little bit like a threat to you, well, it probably should. But continuing on the topic of the data center crisis in PS6, well, he said that action has to be taken, quote, "Otherwise, we cannot survive in this landscape." Now notice what that change is not. It is not digital-only consoles, it is not better technology for better games or lower prices to reach more people. Those would all be lovely, but they're not really possible for Sony, it seems. When Sony's CEO says survival, he basically doesn't mean avoiding death. What he really means is Sony won't stay a hardware company, and they have two levers to pull that most of the industry actually doesn't. Lever number one: make your money somewhere other than your hardware. Obviously, for Sony, they've got quite a lot. They now make 2/3 of their revenue from basically being an entertainment company, and a full third is from PlayStation, and that's what they've chosen to lean into. As an example, they actually sold their kind of beloved and respected TV division back in March, and their plan is games, anime, film, and TV all feeding off each other in a lovely self-perpetuating cycle. Totoki described turning game IP like God of War into a TV show as the flywheel we like to make. And it makes sense. A show makes money in its own, it moves a ton of licensed merch, it would drive catalog game sales, and, all that stuff would pull people into Sony's ecosystem. But this is actually what's going on across the industry. Look what Xbox is doing with its resources. Fallout, Wolfenstein, COD, Blizzard, all those studios have transmedia productions in place. And even Electronic Arts is at it with a Battlefield movie and a Mass Effect series. But the thing is, that lever only works if you happen to be sitting on a huge mountain of intellectual property. Without that, there is another strategy, and that is simply to change how any of that stuff even gets paid for in the first place. That's the next trend, and it worries me. Apple and buy now, pay later firm Klarna are working to roll out US leasing for all Apple devices, not just iPhones. The way it works is a constant monthly payment, and at the end of a multi-year term, you can quit, you can upgrade, or you can just buy your device outright. So the idea is easier access to paying customers, some lovely guaranteed income, and over in Team Green, well, we've seen Xbox do the very same with buy now, pay later. And back in May, Totoki told investors that PlayStation was considering, quote, various simulations, including changing business models. If and when a PS6 launches, you can probably expect way more ways to buy that thing than just dropping, $1,000, $1,200, whatever the hell it'll end up costing. And that strategy extends to the hardware itself, basically building with whatever components you can actually get. And for a really good example of this, we can just look at Apple. The MacBook Neo was designed to use a stockpile of iPhone chips, basically for laptops, and to essentially reset what entry-level pricing could look like, though they did have to increase the price of the Neo, likely because of the memory shortage. And if we move from Apple to AMD, we see the exact same thing. There's a brand new 8GB graphics card with the RX 9050, but it's also got a 4GB OEM-only model that was spotted by Tom's Hardware. So what we see is that if these companies have any leverage to lower the cost of entry or to find new money, they're absolutely pulling it. And that, of course, raises an interesting question. What about everyone who can't? Because it kind of turns out that they often do make things that we like. The biggest players in the industry then are not just riding out this crisis. What they're actually doing is they're changing how their business models work fundamentally. That's fine for them. And to be clear, the big giants can still get their chips, just in lower quantities and for a far higher price, which kills their unit economics. But obviously their line will still have to go up, and we all know what that means. It means supplementary income. It means financial tomfoolery to sell consoles, and we all know that such tomfoolery never comes back to bite us in the ass. And what it'll mean for us is that once a console is in your house, it will somehow be squeezing more money out of you. But think back to Framework, and even to the tiny indie company Valve. Their entire problem was leverage, and that they didn't have it. As smaller hardware operations, they effectively just got demolished. Now, Valve make a lot of money. They could probably fund their hardware plans off Counter-Strike loot boxes alone. Framework does not have that luxury, though. So what happens to the rest of the market when all the giants pivot, when they change their business model? That's what IDC called out as a trend to watch. Vendor consolidation. And that doesn't sound great to me. What it would basically mean is the biggest companies like Apple being able to, quote, use their scale across adjacent business lines, including smartphones and servers, to secure memory supply and squeeze out smaller competitors. So that's a way in which a market like this really does play to incumbents. Because sure, they could burn a lot of cash, they could lose a lot of money, but they could probably tank the hit, and the up-and-coming competitors, well, they probably can't. And that means that for the rest of the market, this is truly existential. Higher costs and lower volumes do hurt today, but the competition that we are likely to lose across loads of these markets, well, that is something that will hurt us for years. And it is what you could essentially call the death of the middle. We're probably seeing that in hardware and a lot of these big companies, but of course, you'll be aware of what the death of the middle looks like as a gamer because of AA games. One of the things that was so healthy for the industry, but that as the 2000s turned into the 2010s, turned into the 2020s, well, AA's just kind of died, and the middle of the market went away. Let's say then, for the sake of argument, that 2028 marks the peak of the crisis. Best case scenario, new production lines spin up, and data center demand finally cools. Do component prices go down under that scenario? I don't think you should count on it, because by then, customers will have spent years proving that they will pay more. The survivors will have priced accordingly. The biggest companies can leverage their scale and alternative revenue streams to just get through the problem. What happens to everyone else? The upstarts, the luxury brands, the boutique experiments like, say, the Steam Machine. I think the big question is how much of that tier of the market survives. Because those companies really matter. They put pressure on the giants, they drive innovation, and if they get big enough, they do drag prices down. A market where only the largest survive is a market with less reason to care about hardware as a revenue driver than it kind of has up to now. While the crisis may end in 2028 or 2029, rebuilding competition and overcoming the inertia of the market will obviously take far longer than that. At least right now, to level with you, I don't think that this stuff is going to get meaningfully better anytime soon. And I know that there's almost a cottage industry of predicting that the, AI bubble is going to pop, now, or maybe pop within 3 months or whatever. Well, the thing is, there's a lot of forces riding against that. And also, if it does pop, because of the financial entanglements, because of where the money's going, that will likely have systemic effects across the economy. So even if that does pop, and even if it is a big disaster, it's not like that is going to magically make the gaming and hardware sectors healthy again. Far from it. And I think that means for the average person for the next 5 or 10 years, there's not that much that we can do other than move our gaming towards things that are less GPU intensive. Maybe to try more indie games and support the bits of the market that operate at a scale that feels far closer to, well, us spending our money. That likely means away from the big Sonys and Xboxes, and probably towards indie games and Steam. If I'm being honest. Now, one of those games that you could pick up is called Rideshare Stimulator. And as it turns out, the whole story from that game, which is being published by, the Space Marine 2 people, it is quite something. It even involves Randy Pitchford and a missing USB drive. You can find out all about it in the next video.